Hi, everyone. This is Jim Flint and Janine Loving-Drake. We're happy to be speaking with you today about all things automotive advertising. We're going to talk with you about the different things that are happening in the world of automotive advertising in hopes that you will be able to sell more cars and make more money at your internet dealership. Today's topic is actually speed, one of the key considerations in the industry that we work in. And so we're going to take a look at a few concepts there. And within the first 3 episodes, we'll talk about core competencies that are out there in the area of speed, as well as the value of the things that you have in episode 2. And in episode 3, we'll talk about the values that help drive our organization. So we're looking forward to these continued conversations that we'll have with you online via these podcasts. Janine, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm privileged to be here this morning. So thanks for inviting me along.
Yeah, no problem. We're excited. Janine's an account director with Local Search Group, and she has great insight into the automotive industry. She's been working in the industry for how many years now?
So I did the math the other day, and I've been half on the automotive retail side now and half on the digital side or marketing side. So it's a pretty important time for me in my life.
Yeah,
I feel like everything's come aligned.
Yeah, you definitely have a balanced perspective now, right?
Yeah.
Kind of the yin and yang of what's going on in a very dynamic environment. And we were talking off air about the situation that's out there now. Fast right, slow wrong. These are kind of like on a continuum. And you were saying that there's a priority that you kind of look at in terms of, nobody wants to be slow and wrong, right? Everybody wants to be fast and right, but there's that kind of middle ground. How do you feel about, things that are fast and wrong versus slow and right? Which way would you go?
Well, I prefer to be fast and right every time.
Usually you are.
Yeah,
right.
Right. Yeah, and most of the time that's I'm on my A game, so to speak. But I've never, ever, in my 20 years of doing this, I've never had a dealer say, "Oh yeah, you can just get that to me like next week, or maybe next Friday." That's never, those are words I've never heard. It's typically when they want something done, it's yesterday. They actually wanted it done yesterday. So, when you think about those things, fast and slow, right and wrong, right? It's always best to get things done quickly, right? I think that the expectation at a dealer level is there, right? That they want things just turned around as quickly as possible. So, things like communication, right, with dealers is very important. Knowing how each dealer likes to communicate, because I think that it's different on every level. I have some dealers that they're fine with email, some that are good with text. But just even the way technology has evolved over the past 5 years is just incredulous, right? I mean, we can get things quicker. It's amazing. Sure. So, making sure that whatever form of communication it is with your dealer, your client is there. Fast right is always the best delivery. Being slow is just never acceptable, even if it's a slow right.
I think, and it's my personal contention that fast wrong is better than slow right. And people look at me like I've lost my mind when I say that, but there is a little bit more room that's provided if you get it to someone quickly.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, I agree.
And when we think about the generation that's coming up, it's interesting to think about delayed gratification, but that's not the case anymore. It's instant gratification. You go to your phone and you get whatever you want, talk to whoever you want, whenever you want.
Right.
And it's kind of worldwide too. And I think, and we'll talk a little bit more about Mark Zuckerberg in a second, but he said done is better than perfect, right? And so you have a generation of Facebookers, right, if you will, and it's now become something that's across not only our country, but really across the world.
Correct, yeah.
And done is better than perfect. So
it's interesting. It only took me 60 days to wrap my head around that. So
that concept?
Yeah. But I got it. And it's correct, right? But it does take a while for that to sink in. But
You know, and
speed is the most important thing in today's
without
world.
a doubt.
Without a doubt.
And so as we look at that, and I wanted to talk a little bit about how fast, because we're going to talk about, selling cars and making money. So this is the part about the making money, right?
Yeah.
So Mark Zuckerberg was the youngest person to ever achieve a net worth of $1 billion.
Yes.
Right? Now, he did that when he was 23.
23, right? That's when he earned his first billion, right? And a lot of people know that story, right? That Facebook was born in the dormitory of Harvard with him and his roommates. It's really an incredible story. I mean, I think if people haven't really looked into or understand what happened, I mean, he basically was writing programming when kids were playing the games,
Playing
right?
the video game.
In middle school.
He's writing code.
Yeah, he's writing code, which is just amazing. But it's a great story, if people don't understand the background. But I didn't mean to cut you off, please.
No. And I think the comparison point now, more recently, Kylie Jenner.
Oh, yeah.
Right? She's 21 and she's a billionaire too. Now, the thing about Zuckerberg, he's continued to grow. His net worth is now estimated at $67.3 billion.
That's it?
He didn't stop.
That's all.
He just kept going. So he's, I guess, according to this poll that I'm looking at, the 8th richest person in the world. When you look back at Zuckerberg versus Kylie, and maybe speak to this for a second, Kylie's got a product, right? And Zuckerberg has content that's created by the people.
A service.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And do you think over time that Kylie will continue to move down that path, or do you see her, Instagram, the category she's in, cosmetics, is a little bit different than, say, the digital aspect?
It is. Well, I think in today's world we have these influencers, right? And so she was kind of the first influencer, or one of the first influencers, right, on Instagram. So when you actually look back at it, that is a service or a consulting,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that she started as that, and then built the brand and the product kind of around that.
She does add value, like when she endorses
Right.
the products, and then she decided to bring her own product to market.
Yeah.
I do think there's a little bit difference because, I mean, Kylie came from the Jenner family.
Mm-hmm. So she had definitely had that
exposure, right? At a very young age. She saw what her older sister, Kim, and Chloe did. And so the family aspect of that certainly matters. And, I find it interesting, the dynamic. I mean, Zuckerberg was at, you say Harvard?
Right.
And whereas Kylie was homeschooled, right? And so that homeschool and that family, I mean, they were kind of learning their lessons literally on TV, watching the episodes of the Kardashians each and every week. And so I think that's kind of interesting in how that dynamic shapes itself.
But people were able to get information quicker, right, on social media. I remember back in the day, right, when I was growing up, there were no tutorials on how to do makeup.
No.
Right? Now you've got those things so quickly and so fast, and that's what people want, is they want that speed of information, which I think is the important thing, right? To tie it back into automotive, it's like, how do we do that in an automotive perspective and package it up and give it to our clients so that they can be successful and sell more cars?
Yeah, there's a huge dynamic reshaping the automotive industry. I think there was kind of the first wave of the internet. Then we followed up the second wave of everybody moving from a desktop environment to a mobile phone environment or smartphone environment. And now this third wave is digital retailing. And as you look at that, and I want you to comment on this because we've watched some different videos through the years, but it's almost like the operational aspect of advertising. And there's a dealer group out of Colorado, Champ Automotive, who talks about one price, 1 hour, one person. Mm-hmm. And if time matters most, right? Can you, what do you think that sounds like with other clients? can they keep that commitment, or what are you doing as it relates to expectations on speed to the consumer?
It sounds amazing.
Right? Wouldn't you want to sign up for that deal?
I would love to sign up for that deal. Yeah. I mean, it really is. It's a great promotion. I really love it. You know, you have to, as an automotive dealer group, you have to have the policies in place to make sure that you're delivering on that promise. But I think it's a fantastic message. It's the message that every consumer wants to hear when it comes to the car buying process, because it basically overcomes all of the consumer objections, right? Why they hate car dealers, right? It's the time it takes to buy a car. It's all the different people that they have to go through, you know, the salesperson and finance and all of these different things and service and all those things. So, I mean, it really is, you know, it takes care of all the objections up front. So makes it really easy and comfortable, I think, for consumers to walk in. But we are definitely in a now business, right?
Yeah,
and you're famous for saying that's your famous line.
Maybe infamous, but yes, the now part of a now business. And, you know, the story goes back to when Cash for Clunkers came out. It's why I work so much so in Google Ads these days. We're proud to be a Google Premier Partner. We had, you know, a conference call yesterday with Google, and as we looked at what brought us to the table, it was simply that the details that were out there organically were not able to be supported from an advertising perspective. I was working in the dealership and had another agency who was supposed to go ahead and set up all the details for us, and I felt like they were speaking a different language to me, because they said, well, I've got to proxy this and reverse double proxy that, and I didn't know. And so I went to the website, I Googled what it was that I wanted us to show up for, and we were there, number one, in organic position, but there were 2 advertising spots above us. And I remember that Sonic Automotive was one of the spots, and then the Van Tile organization, which is now Berkshire Hathaway, was another one of the spots. And when you clicked on their ads, the ads had all the right content, but after the click, there wasn't that payoff. You just went to the homepage of the dealer website. Whereas on the website that I had created, you had the year, the make, the model, the eligibility for whether or not this car could be turned in on the Cash for Clunkers program. So that's, after going that day without having any action from my vendor, I actually went in and built my first Google Ads campaign. And it was an exact match for the words Cash for Clunkers. And it turned out that people stayed on the site for 7 minutes. They were viewing 7 pages. And it was at that point that I made the commitment to learn Google each and every day at the start of the day, so that I didn't know it would necessarily turn into the business that it's turned into over time. We've been at this for over 9 years now, and that's very exciting. But yes.
So your fast right didn't come?
No, I got lucky too.
You had to make your own first fast right, right?
It was, yeah. It didn't. Nobody else was helping me.
No one else was going to get your vendor partner did not get you to fast right.
No, and we talk about that too. Our goal is to be fast right. I think the one place, and you know, I'll end on this as we talk through the podcast on speed, where you can't be fast wrong is with privacy. So kind of back to the Facebook thing and the Google thing, they're now testifying in front of Congress. They're working for Zuckerberg's advocating that the GDPR be part of the U.S. because Europe has taken a leadership position in privacy disclosures. And so as we look at that, being fast wrong with data, when you look at companies like Target, who's almost become notorious for mis-sharing of information, you know, that's the one standard where you can't afford to be, you know, in Mark's words, I don't know Mark, but in his words, you know, done is better than perfect. Probably not there. And they probably cut a few corners through the years. I think I saw that they paid a $5 billion fine. So, but remember, his net worth, he's okay.
I think he'll be okay.
He'll be okay.
He'll be all right.
And you think Kylie's going to be pretty good too. I have a quote from her mom, Kris Jenner. She said, Kylie made her own money for over a decade. She put it in the bank, she saved every nickel, and then when she decided on what she wanted to do, she spent her money on a venture that could have gone south or north, and it did really well. Yeah. You know, and that turned out to be her Ulta Beauty line. But I was going to share with you here, maybe you can help our guests turn this back to a car conversation. She likes her cars.
Yes.
Check out what Kylie has in her garage. You want to share that with
so
us?
$400,000 orange Lambo,
Yeah.
Aventador, a $200,000 Land Rover, $320,000 Rolls-Royce Ghost, and a $227,000 Mercedes-Benz G550.
She knows image, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got great taste.
So maybe there's some automotive advertising expansion here. There's some possibility. There's some upside.
Right.
But either way, final thoughts. Yeah. Speed matters.
Speed matters, and to consumers, it's just as important, truly, at the end of the day, as it is for the dealers, right? So how fast can we get them to the right place on your website to make a conversion, in my mind, is what we want to do. So not only is it important for, us as vendor partners, dealers, but ultimately and most importantly, it's important to the consumer. And that's why we need to all focus on getting faster and better.
That's right. That's Janine Loving-Drake. I'm Jim Flint, and thank you for joining us today on the Automotive Advertising Podcast.
Thanks, guys.
This is Automotive Advertising with your hosts Jim Flint and Janine Loving-Drake.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Automotive Advertising Podcast. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. My name's Janine Loving-Drake. I work with Local Search Group, and I'm here with our founder, Jim Flint.
Hi, Janine.
Hello. Thank you for joining us. And so we are going to talk today about value.
I'm excited to talk about value. It's a huge part of our business and the business for our automotive dealers.
Yes.
Right? How do we provide value to consumers? How do we provide value in the advertising space?
Right. And there's the commodity side of value. Or there's commodities, and then there's the consultancies aspect of it. So if you want to maybe elaborate a little bit maybe on the commodities, what is it that we have, right, that we can offer to dealers to help them in today's fast-paced automotive world?
Yeah, where you're only as good as your last month is what it used to be. Now you're almost only as good as your last click, right? Yeah. And that's what's happened. I think things work on a consultancy basis when there's value added to the equation, but when everybody decides they have to have something, right? Or when there's too much production, oil is a really good example.
Sure.
Right? We'd all recognize oil as a commodity, so you have to kind of control production. Well, there's so many searches out there, and now there are actually more smartphones than there are people in the world, right? There's more subscriptions. I guess some people have 2 smartphones. I'm not sure exactly, maybe one for work and one for home. Right. So there's that differentiator. Mm-hmm. And when you look at that kind of a concept, you realize that it isn't just about the advertising side where the click is the commodity, but it's also on the retail side, right? Because cars at some level have become commodities. My nephew is enrolling at Ole Miss. He just started fall classes there.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. My sister has 2 boys at Ole Miss, and the thing I asked him, Philip, the freshman, I said, which one was more important to you, right? Your first car or your first phone? You know what he said?
How old is he?
He's 18, college freshman.
Yeah.
He said that his first phone was way more important because his first car only did one thing and his phone did everything.
Yeah.
And I was just like flabbergasted by that because for me at least, and I don't know about you, but in a lot of our listeners, that car was the independence. That car was what let me drive around the state of Texas if I wanted to, right? Or even the U.S., at least conceptually, I could go anywhere. Meanwhile, all they have to do is grab their phone and they can be in Paris, right, instantaneously looking at the Eiffel Tower if they want to.
Right, that first bike ride, right, that you took at 8 years old or whatever, when your parents would let you maybe outside of the neighborhood, right? That was so freeing.
It was.
And your car is so freeing, right, because it's liberating because you could go out into the world. But how many more places can you bring in with your mobile device?
Yeah, and he made it real clear. I mean, it only does one thing, right? And I'm there thinking about all the possibilities of the places you could go.
Sure.
And to him, the phone's where you can go different places. You got all these different apps. You can text with your friends. They can reply to you instantaneously. So I got it, but it is kind of a wake-up call for the automotive industry,
right,
in terms of what it means. Mm-hmm. And, one of my favorite stories down that path is I had a chance. Are you familiar with Red McCombs?
Yes.
He's an
Yeah,
automotive dealer, but he's also
Texas, yes.
a mega. He's owned NFL teams. He owned the Minnesota Vikings, but he also had a partnership with cable companies and media companies. Right?
Okay.
He owned with Maori Lay's different cable. I'm trying to think of the name of the company right now, but it's escaping me. But the good thing for our listeners to know is this is live radio, if you will. So
Right.
we're not going to go back and edit it. But so he had that balance between competitive, and I think that's probably what drove Red. But we're sitting in a meeting. He was transitioning his Toyota and Ford dealerships to his daughter, Marsha Shields.
Okay.
She's great. And as we're sitting in the conversation, I'm sitting next to him, and he's got on his cowboy boots. Guess what logo he had on his cowboy boots?
What logo did he have on his cowboy?
So I've named 3. There was the Toyota, Ford, and the Vikings.
Vikings.
He had the Vikings on.
Okay.
Okay. And they were these beautiful, probably Lucchese boots, and they had the Minnesota Vikings logo stitched on, and all the people from the factory were talking. And I remember watching him. He was not really listening. He was kind of stroking the fabric of the stitching on that Minnesota Viking logo.
Okay.
And Red has this really commanding presence in the room.
Yeah.
And so he cleared his throat and he spoke up. He's got a much better radio voice than I do. So I'll try to talk a little bit like Red here in a second. But he said, "Gentlemen, I want you all to know that cars are commodities. The possible lone exception is Ford trucks and Toyota cars," right? And he goes, "So I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and we're going to build you that new facility that you're asking for. But I'm not convinced, even with the San Antonio truck plant being placed here, that the Tundra is going to be a big enough truck to compete with Ford," right? So at any rate, the point of that is he's looking at cars as commodities way back when, because he also has Hyundai dealerships and all kind of other franchises. And as you think about that, what do you do as a dealer? How do you compete on things when it is a commodity? What kind of things how do you add value? How do you help your clients add value to the...
Well, you have to separate them, right? And make them different than the rest of the world, right? You have to give the consumer a reason to go to Red McCombs Ford or Red McCombs Toyota. And that is really tough, right? Because you might be a Ford dealer in a market that's got several other Ford dealers. So
30, not in San Antonio, but in a city like Houston, there'd be 30. Chicago, how many are there? Probably 40, 50.
35, 40, I would think, at least, right, within the Chicagoland area. But yeah, so, what's going to make someone drive past one Ford dealer to maybe go to you? And when we talk about price, right, price is what it is.
Price sells cars.
It sells cars, but it's that value, right? It's the consultancy aspect of it, because it's commodities compete on price, consultancies compete on value. So it's bringing that value, right, to your store, setting you apart from all the other Ford dealers and making someone want to come and see you. I think that's more important now than ever. And there's also... it's funny, we were talking about this the other day, but it's also being there when people are looking for what you have to sell is more important than ever. And, we talked about, used to be that driving clicks to somebody's website was important, right? I guess that's the commodity, is that click, right? Driving the click. But anymore, it's about the impressions. And it's almost like we're back to... a traditional advertising form of of what that, what the language sounds like, where it's reach and frequency, right? Like, are you there, right? Is your name available when those auto intenders are looking for a vehicle? And I think that now more than ever, it's important to have a partner that sees that vision, right? Of making sure you have that overall presence in your market, your make, your model, your market.
For sure.
So you have that presence overall digitally, and making sure that you're set up, your message is set apart from all the other dealers that people have to choose from in the community. So
yeah, if I looked at it too, and I know price is important too with your advertising agency, but if you're trying to get them to compete on price. I think that's probably a bad place to be, just like you wouldn't want consumers to compete on price. Don't get me wrong, it's a key consideration, but I always tell dealers, good, fast, and cheap. Pick any two, right? And when you go through that, you realize quickly that more often than not, you would want it good and fast, right? Because if you had to drive, and I know people will drive on used cars more than new cars, but more often than not, people are visiting less than 2 dealerships per. They don't want to go other places.
No.
They're used to things being dropped off at their homes now with the way Amazon works, and they're used to that happening very quickly.
Sometimes by drones.
Yes, yeah, could be, could be. And so as you look at that aspect of it, I think one of the key components of a successful business operations anymore for a dealership is to make sure their reputation is intact, because it functions as this invisible force field. It's either drawing people in to you, and you're actually able to build growth because they trust you intuitively because other people have said wonderful things about you, or it's like, I don't know, a mosquito repellent where the mosquitoes aren't coming, right? It's this keeping you away, and it's keeping your grosses down, and you already, if you're a dealer in today's automotive retail climate, you don't think you have enough floor traffic. So that's one place that you can go to make sure that you differentiate your value.
Absolutely. Yes. Every dealer should be looking at their reputation every day, especially on the 2 big players, which are Google and Facebook, right? To check and make sure that not just, doesn't have to be, a 5-star rating. Consumers can see through that.
They
right?
They can.
So it's almost like they feel like something may be wrong if you're a 5.0 dealer, but just making sure that, you're ranked well and that you're responding to positive and negative reviews is definitely important in this world. And it is kind of that last driver right before somebody comes into a dealership. They'll check to see, the reputation of the dealership before they'll go purchase a vehicle. And yes, to your point, if they're not going to buy a car from you, they're going to buy a car from the next dealer that they go to.
one of 2. And I'll add this to the equation. One of the key things, and I think if you're a dealer and you think you've got this figured out, I wouldn't stop there, right? It's what you don't know that you don't know that's probably killing you. Because if you think, well, I sell 200 cars a month and I really want the factory survey to come in. Well, forward-thinking OEMs like Toyota are talking about doing away with the survey system, which has been part and parcel to successful dealership operations over the years, but that only reflects the people that actually did business with you. Yeah. And it's not public, it's private. A lot of the forward-thinking dealers are looking for the public accolades. And here's the other brutal fact, the radically honest truth of the matter is, if somebody doesn't do business with you, they can still leave a review, right? So if they walk in and you throw the keys on the roof or do any of those untoward tactics that nobody ever does anymore, probably because there are public reviews, right? But you can end up, and it could be as simple as they couldn't get financed.
Right.
So you have to be gracious too, as you let consumers know that you can't do business with them. And so that's a different challenge. And here's the other side of the coin. If I do 300 car sales, how many ROs do you think I'm doing a month?
Oh, gosh. A lot.
Yeah. 3,000 is my guess.
Newer,
right?
yeah.
10 times.
Yeah.
And so if you're actually taking good care of customers on the service drive, you have so many more opportunities to get positive reviews.
Right.
And in the studies I read, it shows that, the people do correlate floor traffic with the volume of reviews, because all things being equal. So if I'm going to, which franchise would you like to own when you retire?
Say Toyota.
Toyota. Okay, I'm going to do Lexus.
Okay.
So you do Toyota. So Janine Loving-Drake, Toyota, and you've got 1,000 reviews at 4.2 stars.
Okay.
And I've got Jim Flint, Lexus, and I've got 4,000 reviews, and it can be at 3.8. They have a tendency to lean in, all things being equal, to the person who has the greater volume of reviews. So
makes sense.
As competitive as our dealers are, I think it's key to their continued success and to add long-term value to their operations to continue to ask people that bought cars for them for reviews, to ask people that service their vehicles with them for reviews, and to remember that just because they didn't buy from us doesn't mean they can't say bad things about us.
Yeah, good point. Point taken. So how, in this crazy world of value and change, can you talk a little bit about maybe what's going on with this new Google?
Yes.
thing?
So it's interesting that Google recently announced that it's going to sunset average position, which they feel like is kind of it was really one of the original search metrics. And so there's been a lot of talk in the space. And all average page position means is, where do you show up? Are you number one? Are you number two? Or number three? In most, and I think it's a very interesting thing, because one of our clients one time, we think about value a lot. And so one of our recommendations going in would be, hey, we think it's good for you to be at the number 2 spot. But this particular client wanted to be number 1, right?
All the time.
All the time. I want to see, and dealers Google their name, and I Google their name, and consumers Google their name. So if you got a name, Google rewards you for being in that top spot, because they give you site extensions of location extensions, review extensions, call out extensions, phone number extensions. I mean, it's price it's all there. There's probably 13 different extensions that you could possibly have. So you do want to be in that top spot. But part of why they're doing away with that, I believe, is because they're not seeing value as a entity. Google's a for-profit organization. They want people going after that top spot like our dealer did. And so the value conversation really is shifting as they take away that information. And you know what they're replacing it with?
No. Talk to
More
us about that. Yeah, because it's very new, and I don't want to misquote.
Yes, we just went through a couple days of
Right.
training on this, and what they basically have established is it's called the absolute top of page position percentage. That's a mouthful. I'm not going to say that twice.
I couldn't remember it once.
Good, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
But that absolute
top
of
of page.
So
Okay.
what we share with our clients now is, when people search for your name,
Okay.
Janine Loving Drake Toyota, how many times out of 100 are you in that absolute top of page
Okay.
position?
Okay.
And it gets you away from funny, right? Shooting for that number 2 spot.
Okay.
And what it does, it's easy to think about it from a dealer name perspective, but think about what you're doing when you're thinking about make model, because everybody's bidding on Honda Accord,
Right.
or in your case, Toyota Camry.
Right. Okay. So it's going to look more like a percentage
It is a percentage.
now
Yeah.
versus an average.
1.2 or
Got it.
2.3 or
Okay.
3.1.
Yeah. Something to be in the know about, right? That's a pretty big change. I mean, as we moved from a desktop world to a mobile world, that's an important piece of the puzzle, I think, and something for dealers to be aware of, that's going to be going away. So good stuff.
This is Automotive Advertising with your host, Jim Flint.
Hi, Jim Flint here today with Chris Warr. We're happy to discuss with him in this second season of the Automotive Advertising podcast with Jim Flint the concept of creativity. So we're going to work into the 7 C's, not the 7 C's like out there when you're on the ocean.
Yeah.
Right, but we're going to talk about the 7 C's of creativity. And since your name is Chris, right?
That's the first one,
That's
right?
the first C. So we're gonna talk a little bit about yourself. I'd like you to talk a little bit about yourself and tell the audience, the listeners out there, what it is that you do and how you're very involved in the creative process.
Oh,
when
for
I think
sure,
creative,
for
I think
sure.
of you, especially in the Houston, Texas, if not Texas area. You work throughout the U.S., probably international. Tell us more.
Okay.
Why do I think of Chris when I think of creativity?
Well, we're a video production company, an audio production company here at Moffitt Productions.
Yeah.
And so we deal with a lot of different types of clients, from car dealers and automotive to retail establishments to corporate brands. So our creative style is kind of influenced by a lot of different inputs. And we have a long history of writing a lot of scripts, a lot of creative concepts. We work with agencies directly. We work with clients directly. So we've kind of well-versed in every medium and every different style out there.
Yeah, you've grown up in the business, literally, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. So my dad started the company in 1988.
Okay.
My first job was being in a Splashtown commercial. Which
Okay,
was,
wow, you were.
Yeah,
Yeah, you were talented.
Which was the best, because I got to get the whole school out of school for a day, and we got to
really?
go ride all the rides at Splashdown. I was like the king of elementary school.
What grade were you in? Do you remember?
Third grade. Third grade.
So 8 or 9 years old, right?
Yeah,
and you're like, hey guys, let's go to the splash.
Oh yeah, and Space Rapids had just opened up. That's what we made the commercial for. So like everybody was getting to ride this ride that nobody was going to get to ride for 3 months. I mean, it was epic.
Did you make it through Final Cut? Were you actually in the film?
I was.
Commercial spot?
Me and my
All right.
brother Jeff, we were going down the slide in astronaut gear, and then all of a sudden it clipped, and we were in our swimsuits in a tube heading down the slide.
Having a great time.
Yeah, it was
right.
am-
The
it
fun
was
started
amazing.
back then.
Yeah.
Still have fun today.
So yeah, but then from there I just started working summer jobs, and
Well, let's hold
Okay.
on though. Hold on. My, unscripted this whole thing.
Yeah.
But we've been working together for a few years. If I remember correctly, you kind of took over the business circa 2008, 2009,
yep, that's correct.
in the middle of.
A lot. In the middle of a lot. So
Did that teach you how to be creative? Like
It did.
How to be resourceful, right?
we had to be extremely resourceful, and I mean resourcefulness and creative they kind of go hand in hand. Where they say necessity is the mother of all invention.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I feel like that was the perfect description of what we went through. Our dad was stepping away from the business, and he was going to shut it down. And Jeff and I were just young and dumb enough to say, "What are you doing, man? We can handle
got
this.
this.
We got this. We're all
Yeah.
good." And sometimes that blind faith and ignorance just can propel you to all kinds of cool places.
Yeah, and you guys have helped clients get propelled
Yeah.
to new places. I think, having started Local Search Group about the same time, right? And now it's 10 years later, and if you're listening on the Apple iTunes, you may not see the video, but if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that we have some new things 10 years later that we bring to the table, including like face masks. I've got the clear if you need any.
Oh, yeah, I'll take
this
some of
stuff.
that.
We'll
Yeah.
get you, make sure you're fully sanitized.
You're a fancy flyer, huh?
I am, man. Yeah, no, you got to still go see the clients in our neck of the woods.
Oh, for
and
sure.
so I was out yesterday seeing a few, and things have changed over the last 10 years. You have to get more creative now in terms of how you communicate. The other thing that I think has happened is things are so much faster than they were before. I mean, they used to be fast, and that is one of the things when I got into the business 10 years ago, we wanted to be a now part of a now business. You are incredibly fast, and your turnaround times are exponential when compared to other production houses. How do you manage that creative process with the speed requirements?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, it's about having a process. Like if you have a process that you can execute, you can find out how to make it faster and faster. And I think really, I don't know how much the speed has changed in the work. I think the speed has changed with people's expectations. I mean, like they're just consuming so much content all the time that they have another idea before their first one's done. So they're just constantly requesting something newer and fresher. And so it really adds a lot of pressure, but we don't really flinch at it because we have those processes in place. We know how when someone comes to us with an idea, how to take that idea and, spit it back at them, get it approved, and move on to the next step.
Right. And sleep is optional, right? I mean, we're coming in this morning. I landed on a flight from California last night, closer to 9 o'clock, which was really, and I'm up till midnight. And I thought I had a rough day because I spent 8 hours on a plane with 2 connecting flights. But you apparently had no sleep.
No sleep. No, I'm
'Cause you
on
had
28 hours, I think, right now.
Okay.
28 hours a week.
And you said it was like an IT problem, but I'm
Yeah.
assuming this is you trying to get the content for video.
It's exactly
up.
what it is.
Yeah.
So we have a backup system, and that backup system is there in case you need it. And you don't ever want to need it because it's extremely painful to have to restore everything you need. And so we have a lot of clients right now. It's incentive time. Everybody needs their spots, and they need them uploaded before the end of today so they can make their runs on Monday. And so we spent the last, 2 or 3 days just restoring assets so we could get everybody up on the air. And sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah, we were talking to our team we are feeling like the launch of this particular month happened mid-month, because as you close out holiday weekends, that is a reset.
Oh yeah.
And so that, we can see these things coming. And so a lot of it involves preparation. I think more of it involves purpose, right? Because when you know what you're in it for and what is motivating you to do that, you can produce exceptional work, right? So when you think about creativity and your purpose, what is it that drives you creatively?
I want to make something new.
Okay.
So like, I think one of the things that helped me early on is I want to make the project I do now my best project yet. So we're constantly trying to be better every single time.
Innovate.
And yeah. And really, I mean, it's not always about recreating the wheel. It's just saying like, okay, this wheel looked like this. Let's make this one a little rounder. Let's make this one a little more streamlined. Let's make this one a little bit better. And I always look for inspiration. And I say, I like that about that. So my next opportunity I have, I'm going to try to use that ingredient. Okay. And like any artist, I feel like it's about learning the different ways to use the brush. And then once you know 500 ways to use the brush, you can combine that in a million different ways. Okay,
so I use, and that you brought something to my mind, the way you said that. I use the word innovation. It's almost become cliche. So I'm gonna put that a different spin based on what you said. What is it that inspires you, right? Where do you go for inspiration in the creative realm? Are there things that are tried and true that you can go back to and say, I want to look at this, I want to look at that to help inspire me to do these things at a higher level? Because when you're talking about continuous improvement, that's a pattern that includes failure.
Oh yeah.
But yields success.
Yep.
And so knowing that you're going to run into those issues from time to time, right? How do you continue to stay inspired?
Well, first of all, we always look at what is the best stuff that's out there for commercials, because we make a lot of commercials. Yes. So like, what are the best commercials? What kind of ingredients are in those commercials? What are the elements? Okay. And we look at those and we try to use those same ingredients. It's like, a filet mignon's good, right? So let's use some of that. And then besides that, like, our world is so rich with design. Look at your phone. It's or your computer here. It's beautifully designed. You look at your car, the textures, the the housing, the architecture, even in bags and tags and labels, the cover design of your book. We are inundated by quality design everywhere. Now, there's also a lot of really bad design, but you can draw inspiration, from all kinds of things. And I just look for that and say, I like that, and I'll try to do something with it.
Speaking of, it's a good time for a quick paid political advertisement for one of the best planned and polished books of all time, but one of the worst titles, right? That's right, 2020 Vision. It's funny because we released this at the end of 2019. It's actionable insights for digital retailers. It's all about change and things, and really it turned into so much change.
Well, this is perfect time for it, right? Yes. We're addressing change, and this is the biggest year on record, I feel like.
But the book that continues to march on, that I'm serious, that outsells this one,
slow and steady.
It's more recent and more relevant, I would dare say. People are not interested in 2020 anything.
No.
They're definitely interested in car dogs, right? In millionaires.
It reminds us of a better time.
Dogs, millionaires. That is the creative solution. 2020, not so much.
No.
Could have been 2020 virus. I don't know, something different. But it continues to march on. And of course, there are cars on the front, right?
There are, yeah.
We're definitely in the automotive space. You also do things outside of automotive, though, too, I take it.
Yes, we do. Automotive is a huge focus for us, and we've gravitated towards it because, one, I like cars. Sure. I like the whole, automotive experience. And, dealers are fun to be around. These are guys that are motivated to work hard and be the best. That resonates with me.
Okay.
So we've always gravitated towards it, but we do like other stuff outside of it. There is there's sometimes more grand vision outside of automotive and more creative opportunities. So we find ourselves in those arenas as well.
Yeah, I think automotive, a lot of times you find yourself reinventing yourself each month or launching a vehicle. So those vehicle launches kind of expand the brand and drive more creative elements. But when you look at the event messaging that we often work for our clients on, it helps to look at how to reinvent the process there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of tried and true concepts, and you can't blame dealers for wanting to I guess reuse a lot of these incentives and these reasons to buy, because they do have appeal to audiences, but everything is in 30-day cycles in this environment, and so it can seem repetitive in a lot of ways, because I might do a trade-in spot for you in March, but then I'm doing a trade-in spot for somebody else in August, and then it's just these concepts kind of keep coming up.
All right, so and to stay with our 7 C's and to kind of close out this segment, right, our first podcast on the 7 C's of creativity, let's bring in another C that's really shaped the dynamic, COVID.
Yeah.
Have you seen that generate new creative concepts in terms of how dealers are relating to consumers, or was it something that seemed like it was going to be a big deal that really hasn't carried into a way of doing business differently? Has it transformed?
I think both things are true. There's
Okay.
dealers that don't have that ability to speak as candidly with customers, or the customers aren't willing to listen because they don't have that reputation.
Okay.
And there's other dealerships that they have a reputation, and customers trust them. And when they come out and they make messaging about home delivery, or we'll deliver for a test drive, or some of these other
Yes.
items that are coming out, people are responsive to that. And so I think both are true, but it has provided a humongous opportunity. I mean, everybody has been looking for a true online car selling opportunity,
Right.
or experience or opportunity, yeah. And there's always been some red tape in the way. And that has
Oh,
been
the F&I department, by the way. But yeah, I understood.
So it's been bulldozed to some degree, and now the ability for someone to go on your website and shop and click add to cart and buy a car is become a lot closer. I wouldn't say it's all the way there, but it's gotten a lot closer.
And I think that's a huge takeaway to close out our session with Chris, is that the connectivity to the consumer really drives the creativity. And if we were playing a drinking game, I would be all over the C words, right? And we're going to continue on with future podcasts. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Jim, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
This is Automotive Advertising with your host, Jim Flint.
And welcome to the Automotive Advertising Podcast with Jim Flint. I'm happy to continue season 2 with Chris War.
Hey.
We're talking about creativity. We're talking about the 7 C's of creativity.
Okay.
And this is our second session. We're going to talk today about not creative concepts, but creative conception. How to open up the mind and bring ideas to a visual medium, bring ideas to paper, bring ideas to scripts. I've kind of looked through and tried to develop a process where we gather the information that we need, where we breathe in or meditate on what it is that we are trying to achieve, then step away, come back, and then achieve. Now that's how we approach things. I'm curious, in terms of those 3 or 4 or 5 steps that I just mentioned, is there one piece of that puzzle that you feel like is a key to success, or do you have a different process in terms of how you bring creative to clients or to consumers?
I think it's really, really similar. Our first step is to roll around an idea or concept or goal and stretch it as many ways as we can. Just brainstorm and vomit every connection that comes to our head. Don't censor yourself at all.
You made me think of silly putty, like stretching it. Just like
move it around. Any kind of stupid connection. Don't censor yourself. Don't tell yourself no ever in that phase. And I think that's kind of similar to what you've explained. And then we step away from it and we let things, marinate and then come back.
Simmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your brain's got a way of solving a problem for you if you just let it work.
Right.
So, but it's important to feed it all that input before you let it work.
Right.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't simmer down, you can't get there.
No, you
it's
can't.
amazing. Like
It's gotta cook.
And I say this because we work with a lot of type A personalities, and I think when I'm not in my creative. And are you type A, would you say, or no?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
You don't think about it,
I don't
right?
know. So maybe I'm not just because I answer like that.
Well, I mean, I move back and forth from type A of where I want to get things achieved, but then I want to also make sure that I give the creative space, the room it needs to breathe and succeed.
It does need it.
Yes, and I think as you look at it, so let's say you go through this process, and now you've got an idea that you're taking to the client or to the consumer, and they're like, they want to reshape it. That's a nice way of saying it, right? They want to take what you've stewed on and brewed on and thought about and simmered, and now the meal is ready. You're the chef, and they say, well, I hear what you're saying, but I don't think that's going to work.
Well, I think that's where all the great stuff happens.
Okay.
Because like, if you have no boundary for your idea, what are you going to make? I mean, you could make anything. So it doesn't really inspire a lot because there's no necessity. When you come with an idea or some concepts to a client and they start putting boxes around you and saying, you got to include this, you got to have this, you got to trap this. Now you have to figure out a way to make your ideas work within those parameters. And all kinds of interesting stuff starts to happen when you have just a few lines drawn that kind of box you in. Because you can't be outside the box if there's not a box.
Yeah.
You got to have it there. So
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, for sure. I find too, like if you get too many chefs in the kitchen, right, it can mix things up and make things difficult. Do you find yourself competing with the client versus consumer connection of advertising and marketing in the creative process?
Well, I feel like sometimes the clients are in their own way.
No doubt.
Yeah, that's going to happen. But your job is to help them get out of their way and to convince them that what you're saying and what they're wanting are the same things. And if you don't believe they are, or if they're not really, then you don't need to be having that conversation with them. You want to take their best interests and their goals and help them reach that, whether that's what they want to hear or not. And from them, if they're making good decisions, then hopefully they're going to trust you. If you're, bringing the goods.
You know what I find in the creative process, a lot of times people market to themselves. And so creatively, you're really not marketing to yourself. And I remember when I was working at Nike, right, we had it was one of my first days on the job. I was doing an internship, and I was 25 years old. I knew everything, right? And I was really smart, and I would help you. I mean, we all are, right? We all are very smart. Were you brilliant?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was genius.
Yeah,
and you kind of are. You're kind of better than you're ever gonna be.
Yeah, totally. Like just like these people that are day trading in the stock market, right?
Oh yeah,
it only goes up. Like
That's
Davey Day Trader, if you've seen him, if you haven't checked him out, definitely check out his podcast and Twitter feed. But as you look at that, I remember the experience with Nike. She said, "Hey, here's the thing, hotshot. This is my boss. She's in Northwestern MBA, not NBA. She was tall. She probably could have played in the NBA, but MBA, very brilliant. Lori Morrow, if she's listening." And she said, "Hey, we market to 8 to 13-year-olds. Well, what do you mean? Like, that's our target audience." And so she showed me this creative slick of an eyeball sitting on top of a fork. And it was a basketball ad. And she asked me if I got it. I said, I looked at it for a few minutes. I didn't get it, right? And I said to her, well, I'm not an 8 to 13-year-old, because I was 25 and I was really smart. That was the wrong thing to say. She goes, kids that age get it. An eyeball on the fork is for a player, because you can spin the fork and the court vision. And once you saw it. And she said, oh, and by the way, when you buy something at that window, that age group, you buy it for the rest of your life. You become indoctrinated. You become a forever customer. Whereas if you are older in the acquisition, you're not going to stay. And so whenever you look at Nike advertising, and it holds true today, they continue to be creative with their shoe designs, with even the reintroductions of the Jordan brand. And
I'm a Jordan brander for life.
Yeah,
so,
me too.
Yeah,
right.
They got me at 8 to 13, so I'm in.
But they continually, I mean, they're on shoe 34, 35. A new player, rookie Zion Williamson from the New Orleans Pelicans, is representing the Jordan brand. And as they reinvent the shoes, Travis Scott, the Houston native, he's got his own brand. I mean, they're starting to capture all these different relationships that are happening in the fashion industry, but making the products uniquely their own. And I will tell you, when I look for inspiration sometimes, I love looking at cars, but I also look at shoes because they're much more dynamic and much more experimental.
Oh, extremely. And I mean, they're always pushing the envelope. So you're looking a little bit at the future every time you see it, you know, and maybe it's not there yet for you, but in a couple of years, that style might be perfect what you're looking for, you know.
And they do a great job too. Just for listeners out there, there is an app called Sneakers.
I've got it.
You've got it?
I got it on my phone.
And you can sign up, and you can get different drops that come out, and they are all the prototypes.
Oh, they're the best.
And it is the coolest thing.
Well, so that type of innovation and that type of thinking, that kind of creative foresight, do you see that in the automotive industry?
I don't. Well, I do in parts of it. And we'll talk about that in future episodes with companies that are very much in the electric vehicle space, Tesla being one of them. We'll talk about it with the launch of the Ford Bronco in a future episode and how that is playing out. But I think in a corporate environment, you would get to a place where you're avoiding risk, right?
Yeah.
And so there's so many safety issues, there's so many hoops to jump through, hurdles to clear, that by the time that the car makes it to market, it doesn't look like the prototype that you saw in the artist's rendering.
Yeah. And there is a lot of risk there too. But it always just seems kind of boring. You know, like everybody wants to own something cool.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I worked for Toyota corporate for 7 years.
Okay.
In marketing. And there's a story I'd like to share with you and the listeners.
Yeah.
In the process, it's very much a matrix organization. And so you would have to get creative items approved by a dealer advertising advisory board.
Okay.
Right? 12 dealers to make sure that it had that retail orientation. That once they got through them, which was no small task, I'm minimizing how long that actually took.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're creative concepting, you're storyboarding. Now you would take it in-house, and it would have to be, if it was the Tundra, right? Because a truck plant was going into San Antonio at the time that I was working there. We would have to get it approved by the truck manager, the marketing manager, the director of marketing, right? The director of truck advertising, the VP of marketing, the VP of operations, the VP of distribution, because you wouldn't want to advertise something that you weren't able to produce, right?
Yeah.
All these things start to make sense. And finally, you would run it up the channel, get the president to sign off. You know who the last person was?
Who?
Mind you, I think I've named just about everybody in the organization. Can you imagine who the last person would be?
No, I can't.
It was legal, right? And so I had a really good relationship with the lawyer, but you can imagine after having gone through that entire monstrosity of a process, and his name's Joe Herbert, great guy, and he would always give me feedback at the end, right? Not about legal repercussions or risk, because that's what lawyers do, is manage risk. He'd give me creative feedback.
So is this guy like an Einstein? He was like in the patent office, a creative. He got to see everybody's ideas. And so he's like a guru.
He was good, but I think I just had too much with one of them, right? Because anytime you'd go, like if you'd make it all the way through the loop and it to the president like, well, I want to tweak out this. Well, you're back through the loop now.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So you don't want this guy to say anything.
So now I'm in do-over, and I'm like, I told him that. I said that. I said, hey, I just need your legal guidance. I don't need your, creative guidance. He goes, hey, Jim, I've known you a while, and I appreciate you, but last I checked, you don't need to pass the bar exam to give marketing opinions. I was like, Joe. No, yeah, he dropped the mic on me for sure. But, you do have to take all that feedback and try to assimilate it. And even when you got a guy that you like and he's a good legal guy, even maybe even especially they want to give guidance.
We all can be defensive when it comes to creative, because you do have a lot of effort into it. You do have a lot of energy into it. You have a whole lot of things into it. But, some of the best things that I've ever been a part of are things that people made me change that I didn't want to change.
Get better.
Yeah, and it made it better, and
well, the best thing that happened for me was to get out of my own head, right? And that happened fast. When you accept it that you're marketing to 8 to 13-year-olds when you're 25, and you never ever knew that was what that company did, you have to realize what your mom thinks or what your brother, it doesn't matter. So tell me this, what's your greatest or greater satisfaction? Is it when the client approves of something, like you feel like the client totally gets it, or is it when you see it connect with the consumer? I'm sure you've won awards through the years. How do those feel? Like, are those
awards feel
victories?
good?
Okay.
It's recognition, but I think to make great stuff, you have to be just extremely critical of yourself on some level.
Okay.
I mean, like, I think you have to ignore your own criticism and you have to keep pushing through stuff, but you need to be critical. So when I make something that I am proud of, when I'm done with it, I think that's the biggest success. I'm like, I like this, and I'm really hard on everything we do. I mean, I can show you work that's won award and point out 100 things I'd like to change.
Yeah, you didn't like the shadow.
Yeah, I don't like this.
Right.
I don't like that. I wish they didn't say this. Why do the music should be a dB lower there, or whatever it is.
Yeah, the downbeat on the car door open.
Yeah,
didn't match
it's
the
not
music bed
perfect.
that was at 42% instead of 25.
Yeah, and like, it's stuff that nobody notices, but those little things add up. And if you want to get as many of those little things right.
And that's a great way to end it, because as we're watching the NFL and college football come into play, some of these athletes who play for the fans in the stands, there's not those people watching anymore. So I think that's a great insight for creative types. You want to basically deliver at a ever increasing level of personal satisfaction, right?
For
know
sure.
that what you're doing is the best that you can possibly do. And
If you do that, everything takes care of itself. I mean, you're going to get the recognition. You're going to get, people clients that like it, and you're going to get results.
and still somehow maintain that open feedback pathway, huh?
Oh, well, I didn't say it was easy. So.
Well, there you have it. It's not easy. Chris Warr, thanks for joining me on the Automotive Advertising Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, look forward to having you again soon.
Let's do it.